Hi guys, welcome back. So this is a video review, well not a review, just a video about my thoughts on the series in an African city, and it's basically about 5 African women who repatriate back to Ghana, having lived overseas for a number of years, and they're now trying to take advantage of the career and economic opportunities that are available to them in Ghana. And I was like so excited when I found out about this, because normally YouTube would recommend it, but for whatever reason I hadn't seen this, and I keep getting those stupid like recommendations to watch that hateful Tommy Sotomayor. I mean, I think I watched maybe 2 of his videos, and for some reason YouTube seems to think I really like him. No, I don't. Anyway, so yeah, so when I clicked on the link, I was like, oh my god, this is so exciting. This is like, oh, I just couldn't even contain my excitement. And you know, when the plane touched down at Kotaka Airport, I was like, hey, Ghana in the house. Nana, in fact, I should be doing the nana, I can't even do it properly, and then throwing the Azonto for the remix. That's how excited I was. Anyway, so yeah, so I was really excited at the prospect of seeing African women again on screen, who were like me in a way, because I've often thought about returning back to Ghana, and that's something that I would love to make happen sometime in the very near future. And so I was interested from that perspective as well, but then also interested to see some African women on YouTube. Anyway, so as I was watching this series, I was thinking, wow, these girls have really taken advantage of the opportunity to create their own narrative about Africa and about Ghana in particular, and to show a different side of Africa from the, you know, starving, wars and corrupt officials and yada yada yada. They've really taken advantage to show a different side of Africa. And granted, it's not unique, because this series very much takes its inspiration from Sex and the City. I didn't actually watch Sex and the City, so for me, I kind of see it as more of a Girlfriends type series. For me, Girlfriends was the show that I really enjoyed watching, and I sort of saw more of Girlfriends in this show than I did Sex and the City, so I can't really make a comparison in that regard. A couple of things, well, more than a couple of things, a few things about this web series, and this is in no way a criticism, but I'm just putting it out there, that in some ways I felt that it was a little bit unrealistic. And I say that because there was a lot of well, a lot of this show dealt with relationships, and the girls all seemed to be in sexual relationships. And I thought that it was quite interesting in the way in which that was portrayed, because African women are kind of raised to be sort of chaste, and a lot of us are raised with religion, so our sexuality is not something that we're really supposed to talk about or be quite open about. And you're, in a way, there's like 3 levers, I would say, that kind of pull on you as an African woman. One is your family, and your sort of like the pride, or let's say the honor of your family, is tied very closely to your sexual liberation. And then 3, you've got your own sort of success story. So there's like, or like your own expected success, right? So there's 3 sort of levers, and your family honor, as I said, is tied closely to your sexual liberation. So if you are openly talking about sex, being seen to be sexual, being seen to be with multiple men, then that impacts on the reputation of your family, and then it's almost seem like you're disrespecting your family. So a lot of people will then see you as having either not been raised right, or they'll insult your family, or perceive your family to have not set the boundaries under which you should behave, or you've just disregarded all of the teachings of how a woman should behave, because a woman's sexuality is not really hers to own for the most part. A woman's sexuality is really, it belongs to her dad or her family, and it belongs to her husband. So it always belongs to a man within the family. So you can't be seen to be openly talking about sex. I mean, even if you walk down the road with, like, you know, you're seen with multiple men walking down the road, somebody will go and tell your family, you know, or go and tell your dad, you know, excuse me, I saw your daughter walking with that boy from, you know, and usually it's like some boy of ill repute, and you know, but I'm not trying to cause trouble, I'm just telling you that I saw her, and I just thought you should know. And of course, once your dad gets wind of it, you're in serious trouble. So you're expected to behave in a certain way that is doesn't bring shame upon your family. So I was quite curious from two perspectives about the way in which the sexuality or sex was discussed in the show. From the perspective of one, how realistic the people who wrote the series thought this portrayal of African women was. Because, okay, yeah, they were talking about their sexuality in private, but there was an episode where Sade pulled out her vibrator and you know, in customs, I mean, if you haven't seen it, you'll find it absolutely hilarious. I mean, I thought it was like, I was dying with laughter when she brought it out, but it was far too open a thing to do for an African woman, and I felt that wasn't a particularly, that whole element of their openness with their sexuality wasn't exactly realistic. It was realistic in the sense that they were discussing their sexuality in private, but it wasn't realistic in the sense that they were displaying it in an open way. So I just was curious about that. And then two, from the perspective of they as actors, how their parents viewed them portraying these women as sexually liberal women. And I kind of was reminded a little bit of having watched a film called Ashanti. It's a really old film. It's like made in the 1970s, or maybe, yeah, I think it was a 1970s film. Anyway, there was a woman in it who is like basically the premise of the film is that Michael Caine is the main actor in it. Peter Ustinov is absolutely hilarious in it as the sort of slave trader, and Peter Ustinov steals this African woman from her home and sells her into the sex trade, and Michael Caine is her husband, or I think he's her love interest, and he goes on a quest to go and find her. Anyway, so during the film, that actress, I think her dad was somebody famous, and I remember watching it, and she was full frontal nude. And I remember my dad saying, how can she be allowing herself to be seen naked, like full frontal nudity, not even like, you know, like, I don't know, covering her breasts or something, like everything was on display. And my dad was like, how can she shame her family like that by, you know, showing all of her body in that way? And it just sort of like made me think, their parents must be the same age as my dad, who's like, you know, I think he's like 57. My dad's 57. So, you know, if their parents, the actors in the film, are of my dad's generation, then I do wonder how their parents perceive them being seen to be open sexually, even if they themselves are not actually sexually liberated in that way. So I was just curious about it from that perspective. And then the other thing that I thought was a little bit unrealistic was this, one of the other actresses was smoking quite regularly, and smoking is a big no-no for an African woman. Well, I can't say an African woman, but it's a big no-no for a Ghanaian woman. And I can't imagine that it's any different for any Nigerian woman or any sort of West African woman. And smoking, for the most part, is kind of associated with, like, you know, ashawos, or, you know, prostitutes. That's what a shower means. And you know, I do wonder like how that wasn't sort of discussed in a way, because it's actually kind of a big deal to be walking around smoking, because you don't actually see many people smoking in Ghana, full stop, let alone a woman to be doing it. So I did wonder how, you know, maybe in the next episodes that might be explored in a little bit more detail, those two aspects of the sexuality, and then obviously the smoking as well. And then the other thing that I was thinking about as well as I was watching it was the fact that these women all seem to be from the same socioeconomic background, and they've all had great success overseas. And I was curious as to why there was not that decision in the writing of the characters to have more diversity in the backgrounds of these women, because in a way you could almost say that they were clones of each other. I mean, there's enough distinction between them, obviously, to say that they're not clones, but in terms of their socioeconomic backgrounds, their education levels, they're all pretty much the same. The only thing that's different really is their personalities. And I wanted to see more diversity in that aspect, because the truth of the matter is, not everybody who goes overseas becomes successful. Not everybody who goes overseas takes advantage of the education and the sort of employment opportunities that are available, you know. And there are some people who leave Africa and become mediocre, and they stay mediocre, their children become mediocre, and actually they're probably no better off overseas than they would have been back home. So it would have been nice to see more of more diversity in that perspective. Like in Girlfriends, where you had Maya, who was like a college dropout, or like hadn't gone to college and had a child at 16, and you know, then later on found success. And it would have been nice to see somebody like that, and then also to address that aspect of being a single mother as an African, because, you know, as I said, back to our sexuality, but then also being an unmarried mother is actually a pretty big deal for a lot of African women. And you know, there is that element of judgment that would go with it. So I would have liked to see that as well. And in I think it was episode 9, we were introduced to Stefan. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the guys, you know, they're okay to look at. I mean, not that I was looking, but you know, and I am married after all, so let me just put that out there. But I did notice him, so that's all I'm going to say on that regard. I noticed him. And yeah, and I also I noticed him even more because I'm sure I have seen him on some BET show that was about some gospel singers. Yeah, but there's lots of things that I could relate to about the series, but it just would have been nice for them to acknowledge that, you know, they are kind of different to the locals, because, you know, there's a lot of African women entrepreneurs. In fact, there's a lot of entrepreneurship in Africa anyway, because there aren't jobs like there are over here. So everybody's an entrepreneur. Everybody makes their own opportunity. So, but the thing is, I would have liked for them to acknowledge that they are different to the other African women that are there, and also for them to be introduced to other African women who were also trying to be successful but hadn't necessarily lived overseas, but they were maybe as guides, I guess, or people who were mentors to these girls, or maybe not even mentors, but people who were like the same age and going through the same struggles, but they lived in Africa already. So I would have liked to see a little bit of that as well. But for the most part, I give this series 10 out of 10. And I'm not saying it, I'm not giving it 10 out of 10 just because I'm Ghanaian, right? But I am giving it 10 out of 10 because I absolutely found it so enjoyable. Maybe with the fullness of time, I might be a little bit more critical of it, but I can't really, because, you know, the girls are just so beautiful. Their outfits, you know, are absolutely stunning. The whole premise of it, and I really am so proud of these girls for getting this vision onto the web, you know, because they're taking advantage of the opportunity to create their own narrative, rather than, you know, us as Africans being seen as, you know, always starving, or there's war or whatever. And, you know, I think if you're a young black girl growing up in this time, you are really, really lucky, because, you know, I just think about when I was growing up, and I certainly didn't have these opportunities to see diversity on television. So, you know, now that there are African women who are taking pride in themselves and, you know, just really doing creative things and showing a different side of Africa, I'm so glad that, you know, this is happening now. And, you know, this is our time, this is our opportunity to take it. And those of you who are, you know, motivated enough to take advantage of the opportunities, I absolutely salute you, and I salute these girls. I salute the entire production for getting this on screens. And you know, honestly, I'm just so proud, so proud. Congratulations to the girls for getting it on, and I will continue watching. I'm looking forward to season 2. And again, if you guys haven't seen it, check it out. The link's below. See you later. Bye.